Hello, everybody. This is the Folk Music
Hi.
Educator Podcast. Hi, Erin. My name is Phil,
And
and
I'm Erin.
it's great to see everybody out there in the internet podcast world. And yeah, this is the podcast where two folk music educators talk about what it's like teaching in the modern day of the internet and how do we teach bluegrass and old time fiddle and banjo and dulcimer and all that stuff while on separate sides of the planet and all that good stuff.
Yeah, yeah. It's
And
lovely. We love teaching this way, don't we?
yes, it's great. It's honestly it's so much better for me, but that's just me. Anyways, and this week we've had it's kind of funny. It's so funny how often typical threads of like life and what's going on in each other's lives kind of keep going together. One of the common threads for myself is that so many of my students were working on time management and how to practice and be productive with like the all of the responsibilities of adulthood, of
Mm.
parenthood, and all that kind of stuff. And Erin, you're working on time management stuff as a teacher and musician and stuff too, right? What have you been working on?
For myself, that's right. I am teaching a lot right now, but also preparing to be gone for the entire summer. And so all the things that have to get done in order for me to like leave and be gone, and so it's a lot. And I was telling Phil earlier that um, I had been counting the number of weeks I have left wrong. And so I realized this week that I have one fewer weeks than I thought I had for getting all of this done. So that's a joyful discovery.
I think the I think the technical term for that moment is panic.
Oh, you don't think joyful is the right descriptor?
You poor thing. Well, hey, it's great. We're doing it. And
Uh,
so, with that being said, we kind of decided to maybe make this kind of the topic of this week. And when I suggested this, Erin laughed. It's like, no, we're terrible at time management. How
I'm
can
not
we?
qualified to have this conversation.
And I think that's kind of important because, like, I remember when I was first launching my online my online business and my studio, I remember reaching out on my Facebook and going, who is really good at time management? And can we have a Zoom meeting where we talk about what you do? And I had a handful of people like, yeah. And so I had Zoom conversations. And out of the five that I chatted with, four of them gave me a lot of the same things of like, okay, you want to get a journal that you really like, and they talk about this and calendars and all that kind of stuff. And it was great, really helpful advice, but not useful because their brain was so organized. And I had a friend who was like me and absolutely a, a hot mess of a personality. And they gave me the most useful advice because they were just like, yeah, none of that works. You have to do this, 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 and this. And it's the most janky system. It's like covered in duct tape, but it was actually that was helpful. And so I think having getting advice from folks who are like, this is not my strong suit, but these are the systems that I use,
Hmm.
honestly, pretty helpful.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
And I mean, I will admit, I have tried and failed at many time management systems, but I am getting closer to feeling like I have systems that usually work. And
Mhm.
if I implement those things, I usually do okay. I'm still gonna have weeks that are just really intense because the deadline is there and I
Mhm.
have to finish the thing, and it's just gonna be really intense. And the next few weeks are gonna be that kind of really intense kind of few weeks, but also I don't feel quite as like I'm drowning. It's more like I'm gonna be tired by the time I finish treading water here.
Uh-huh. I ain't broke, but I'm badly bent kind of a vibe.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. All right. So should we talk about like some of the nuts and bolts things that have helped us, or or more of a kind of overview at first? What do you think?
I think that's a good question. When was the first okay, so if you're thinking back to your beginning kind of stages of this, when was the first moment? Do you remember the first moment that you go, click? Oh, that was a good idea. That was a good system I implemented to do it. Because we know that you have a great system where people can log on now and buy them as many classes and all that kind of stuff. But do you remember like the first like little step that you went from being, oh, this is a casual thing that I do every once in a while to this is the first system that kind of brought me into professional.
I mean, I think that each time there's been a click, it's been because I got a little bit ahead of doing the thing, the very next thing. It's like I got a little bit ahead and I could start visualizing, like,
Ah,
you know, like I can remember touring with my sister as like the first professional thing that I did with my music career, right? And the first tour that we went on, we were like booking the gigs for that tour on that tour. I mean, like I remember being in the van driving to North Carolina making phone calls about like can we play in your coffee shop in 2 weeks when we're gonna be in North Carolina.
that's amazing.
And so then like each kind of click was getting a little bit ahead. So we're booking one tour further out and we have the one that we're leaving unbooked. And similarly in my like music teaching studio is like I would initially like we schedule your next lesson at this lesson. And then it was like, well, now I have a system where you can schedule out your lessons if you want to. Or like I would schedule the next 6 week class 2 weeks before I decided to start it. And then it was like I would schedule the next 6 week class while I was teaching this 6 week class. And now it's like I
Interesting.
schedule one whole year of 6 week classes. So it's like anytime I can make a step to be one move ahead, I feel like I've leveled up and something has clicked.
I like that. It's almost like we can kind of like planning our lesson studios is almost like we're planning a tour, so to speak. Like we're
Mm-hmm.
planning these chunks of times. Maybe that's why there are so many in academic institutions that break up the year into semesters or quarters or something like, hey, this is what
Yeah.
we'll do for this next big chunk of the year, and you can plan
Mm-hmm.
out on it. And maybe that's the system that you that now that I think about it, because a lot what I have what I have tended to do is be really good at controlling my daily or weekly routine.
Oh, I'm terrible at that. I need lessons. Okay, go tell me
Yeah,
more.
I like um for me, if I like it's one of the reasons I really dislike holidays is that
Right.
it completely throws off my daily routine that I need to go. So I
Mm,
wake up at 5:20 every morning. I give myself 20 minutes where I kind of just doze off. Then I get ready and I take my niece to school at 6:30, 6:45. She runs late a lot. But then I spend an hour in a coffee shop doing work and studying and all that kind of stuff. And having that daily set of that like beginning morning routine really
mhm.
helps me kind of jumpstart the rest of the thing. And so it's more for me having a daily set of routine, and then I teach from 10 to 5, 10 to 7, sorry, and have the same hour for lunch that I do every day in the same little groups of time. It really helps me kind of create a cyclical sense of my
Mhm.
life. And if I miss something, it doesn't feel terrible because I can just come back to it the next day. And so it's almost like time management is has a lot to do with uh, your perspective of time scales and all that kind of stuff, because it sounds like you are a lot better at planning in that like 6 weeks to a couple of months down the road time type of time management than I am.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm better at big picture things. The thing that happens to me as a result of being better at that is things like I'll schedule an event, like I have a class this weekend, so it's like an extra special thing that's on the weekend. I'll schedule that, but what I won't do is schedule for myself lesson planning time or preparation time for it. Or I won't schedule for myself like how to do marketing for it. And so I have the time carved out for the thing I have to do, but I don't necessarily do as good of a job of like also carving out the preparation time for it. So I'm coming up on this big trip and we're going to be gone for 4 months. So there's all the like physical things that have to be packed for that. But there's also 3 festivals in like 3 weeks back to back that coincide with the leaving for the trip. And so my panic in preparation is one part physical packing things that have to get done, but also it's like the lesson planning and the preparation for these 3 events that like I have the time carved out for the event. I
Yeah,
know how to do that, but it's the like the the planning my individual days so that all of the things I have to do in order to have the, the things that I put on my calendar that I'm good at mapping out and I can envision them and I can lay it all out. I can begin to see my year, which by the way, I had to practice that a lot too. And I often say like the day that I lay out my year and I lay out these are the big events and the big things that I want to schedule and the classes I want to plan. That's like the worst day of my life. I hate it. But I also know that I will be grateful for having done that. And so I plan to make myself an extra special pot of tea that day, and I plan to take myself out to dinner at the end of the day as a reward for it. And like I plan for myself. It's basically the adult version of kids getting a sticker on their sticker chart and then getting a prize at the end. Like I do that for myself on the days that I'm going to work really hard
I
on kind
love
of
that.
mapping out the big picture stuff. But that daily routine is not something I've ever managed to do successfully, having sort of the same day to day
And that's so
process.
interesting because I am the exact opposite. And so I think there's that great quote of how we spend our days is how we spend our lives. I can't remember who
Mhm.
originally did it, but one of the a quote that I recently came by recently that's in the same vein is by Stephen Bartlett. It was at least posted by them. I don't know anything about them, but your life right now is a result of what you did a year ago. Your life a year from now will be a result of what you do right now.
Mhm.
And I like that quite a bit. And I was trying to visualize, I was like, last year, yeah, I was developing all these systems. I was trying to get better at music notation with MuseScore. And I can see that now. There's so many things that I am currently better
Mhm.
at and with that. And so
Yeah.
I think one of the like, there's no script of what we're talking about right now. We're just kind of riffing off of each other's conversations. But I think us as teachers, we should be aware and cognizant about needing to put in the effort for these two types of time perspectives and
Mhm.
how they interact with each other. Because at least for me, if I feel like if I started to adapt my daily routine to include those big picture items,
Yeah.
I will get better at creating those. I will finally get my workshops and my courses off the ground that I've been planning forever. And as well as maintaining that daily sense of security and routine and
Mhm.
stability there. And I think, you know, on the same side with you, like maybe just like starting to introduce this is even if you have to plan it out from like 9 to 10 every day. Well, you sleep in, but you get the idea. So,
Yeah. Well, and you know what's interesting is that um in some ways I crave the patterns and the consistency, but in some ways I also get really bored if I have too much of the same thing. So part of my life has been sort of like intentionally making space for things to be different.
yeah.
um, I also think about you kind of mentioned earlier like helping your students plan their time and how to make music become a part of their routine. And so often for me, like the initial sort of task initiation is the hardest part. And I think about this as a kid, making myself begin to practice was super difficult. Like I need to practice, and then my brain would just like somehow resist that for a
Hmm.
very long time. But as soon as I started practicing, I would then completely lose track of time and play for 2 hours. So one of the
Yeah.
things that my family did in our homeschool routine is we had 8 to 10 do math. We had this like very intense curriculum where you did 2 hours of math a day, and that was very structured. We had to start at 8 o'clock and it went until 10. And at 10 o'clock, we had PE and a snack. It was like this little break and transition time. And one day, my sister and I got this brilliant idea that we would also play a tune during that time. And so we would have PE and a snack and play a tune. And some days, play a tune took us all the way up to Paul Harvey, which came on at 12:05. And when Paul Harvey came on, my dad, who was our stay-at-home parent and teacher, would say, it's time for lunch. You got to stop whatever you're doing, right? And some days the tune break was only one tune, and then we would go back and do whatever other school had to get done.
Yeah.
Um, but by making the initiation of the thing happen at a time that something else was already scheduled. And so often when I'm talking to my students or even for myself, it's like picking up the instrument or sitting down to practice is the hardest part for me. So, what is something that is already putting me in a place where I could add that on? So, like, do you have a routine of checking your email at this time? And you could also make it so that you practice for 5 minutes at that time. And then maybe if there's, enough of a window in that space, you would end up practicing for 20 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour because once you have started practicing, you will more likely keep going than want to stop. But man, initiating is hard.
100%. And that was a conversation I had with one of my students this week is they're a banjo student and they have just had a brand new baby boy and it's very cute.
Oh,
And
aw.
so they've been doing week lessons every couple of weeks now versus every week.
Mhm.
And I chatted with them and they immediately apologized and go, I have to be upfront with you. I have not touched my banjo since the last time we had our lesson. I've had chances to be musical, but I have some ukuleles up on the wall that when I put the kiddo down to play with their blocks or put them down for the nap, I can just grab them off the wall and play for a little while. And so I've been musical with that. And so he goes, I promise I'm going to practice more this week. I'm going to carry my banjo down and put it on the wall as well. That way I have it going. And then he started to describe what he was going to do to practice. He goes, I want to put out a nice routine of like, these are the goals that I want to practice. These are the like how I want to be productive and the specific things, and he listed all of them out. And to me, that just sounded like a chore. And I go, okay, I really appreciate that, but I want to offer you a different perspective. And I haven't gotten good branding for this term yet, but this is where I'm going with. I call it the shrubbery method, the shrubbery idea. If you think of those fancy bushes out in front of mansions or resorts or something that are manicured into the fancy shapes, right? The little
Hmm.
spheres or whatever. If we, you do not, the way that you get that is that you have to let those bushes kind of get overgrown first. You need to let them grow out to their biggest, wildest, chaotic thing, and then you can manicure them and polish them down into the little shapes that you want. You don't manicure as they're growing. Every time that they grow a little bit out of direction, you cut it and polish it. And to me, that is the same idea with practicing. Is if you are not in a position where you're playing every day yet, playing poorly, you can't really make it a priority to polish what you're playing. And so I go, and I go, I tell my student, I was like, is the reason that you're playing the ukulele more often than the banjo because it's up on the wall and you can just grab it? Or is it because you can encounter it and be musical with it without a set of expectations attached to it already?
Right.
And I was like, describe how you're practicing that. You just get it down, and when you need a chord real quick, you just look it up and play it. You play silly tunes, you play things that come up to your mind, right? And he goes, oh my God, yes, exactly. And it's like, so what if for the next 2 weeks you don't think about the productivity? Instead of thinking about trying to play one tune really well, try to play 12 tunes poorly. And I know that probably sounds crazy to us that grew up in more traditional senses of musicality, but like to me, encountering it's much easier to manicure your behavior into a more polished and controlled thing once you have that behavior already set. Once you have the
Hmm.
motivation going, it is better, like the momentum going, not the motivation, the momentum going of what you're doing, you can change that behavior and to fix it. It's to me, it's a lot harder to grow something perfect from the ground up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
There are just so many different ways that we do learn too, right? Like there's a thing that we learn by taking one piece of music and really preparing it and polishing it and building an arrangement. And I often think of that as sort of the contest preparation or the recital preparation kind of thing that
yeah,
you're learning. You're getting really, really good at this one piece of music. And there's a lot that we learn in that process. There's also a lot we learn in the process of learning 50 tunes. Just like learn a new tune, learn a new tune, learn a new tune. Don't polish it, just learn the next one, right? There's also something we learn when we take 6 tunes and we put them together in different ways and we play with like what can I do with these 6 tunes, and
yeah,
maybe we memorize all 6 of those tunes, but we're not trying to like make make each individual tune by itself the culmination of everything we're working on. And I just think, you know, my job as a teacher is to give concrete and practical guidance in terms of like how to practice, what to play, what to work on. Like I have to give you specific things.
yeah,
But if that's not what you end up working on because you're working on something else and you're just playing your instrument and it led you somewhere different, I always want you to follow that path. I never want you to be like, no, no, my teacher told me to work on this other thing. It's like, no, I told you to work on that thing, so that if you couldn't figure out in your own journey and your own muse what to work on, you would have something to grab hold of, right? Like
Uh-huh.
that's the life preserver. But if you are floating down the river and you find a log, which is also going to keep you floating, then like take the log.
Exactly. I think following the dopamine is such an important part of
Right, follow the
education.
creative muse, follow like whatever it is, follow the squirrel, do it.
Do it, exactly. And so for me, like when I'm talking to my students that are in these new things and we're trying to figure out exactly how do we learn music without a traditional, I have recitals, I have juries, I have gigs or expectations. I'm just learning this for me. One of the big conversations I have with them is what does this season of life look like for you for the next
Mhm.
little bit? Whether it's just the next week, the next month, the next 6 weeks, what does it look like? And we talk about, well, we have some family trips coming on. I have my mother-in-law coming to visit to help with the baby for a little bit. And you kind of get a sense. And so then you're able to kind of plan out, okay, what are some realistic or, fulfilling things that we can do during this time to make music a
Mhm.
part of our lives. And so sometimes when you have a whole bunch of free time and you are just hungry for that next step, that contest preparation, oh man, there's nothing better than deep diving into that. And then there
Yeah.
are some times where you're just like, I will be lucky if I have 5 minutes a day. And I'm like, okay, that's when we look up the Beatles songbook off of Scribd. We buy
That's
it off of
right.
Amazon,
And we take
and
one song.
we take one song and we just read through the chords and we follow the chord charts and we sing the
Mhm.
ones that we like, we skip the ones that we don't,
That's
and we
right.
just make music a part of our daily life. And for me, that is the most
Mhm.
important goal with what we're
Mhm.
doing for right now. Whether you're a someone who's planning to be the next Winfield winner, or you're just someone who is trying to learn some claw hammer lullabies for your kiddos as they're growing up so they can go, my dad played the banjo, I love it. And
That's right.
the table of music is there's it's open for everyone and we should always make more room at the table.
Mhm.
So, yeah. But audience, thank you so much for listening. I hope this was helpful. At least it was actually very informative for me to kind of give that perspective of the daily routine versus that like long time preparation and how they can kind of work up in ways that we can introduce that idea with our students in the same ways of maybe daily routines and how they fit in with our seasons of life versus quarters or
Yeah.
semesters. And
I'm a big fan of seasonal thinking. Yeah.
I think that's maybe that's branding trademark. But once again, but thank you so much for doing this. Please feel free to follow us on Instagram at the Folk Music Educator Podcast. And of course, you can like, comment, subscribe, whatever you do on whatever platform you're listening to it. It certainly does help us, we think, at least.
It helps us know that I don't know, there's a community participating and that's beautiful. That's what it's
It
about to
makes us
me.
very happy when we get a lot of our friends listen to this and then they message us and they go, oh, I hadn't thought about that. And it just makes our day. We get so
That's
excited.
right. And if
Yeah.
you have one magical time management tool that has changed your life, please tell us about it.
Please, we want to collect all of them. It's like Pokemon,
That's
man.
right. That's right.
But
Oh man, thanks y'all. This is the Folk Music Educator podcast. I'm Erin,
I'm Phil, and always remember, always be a teacher.
always a student.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.